Hey everyone. Okay, so we're going to get started here. Thanks for joining us for landing your first round interview in tech. I'm Laura Holt. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Career Outcomes Lead here at School 16. We also have joining us today Sergey and Vadim, the co-founders of the school, and just wanted to know if you all wanted to say hi, explain a little bit about School 16 briefly.
Hello. I am Sergey. I'm here on the School 16 team. We have a number of School 16 team members here on the call. Of course, Laura is going to be leading this conversation. She is our careers and outcomes lead. But just wanted to welcome everybody here today. Vadim and I are going to be sitting here in the background. We're going to be mostly helping you out with the chat and answering any questions you might have while Laura is going through her presentation. So please do feel free to jump in. We're going to be pretty active here today in the chat. You might have, just as a quick note, just need to move somebody there. Great. Just as a quick note, if you don't know who we are, the two guys that look kind of similar here with similar facial hair, Vadim and Sergey, very Eastern European sounding names. Yes, we were born in Belarus. We're part Ukrainian, part Belarusian, but we grew up in the States, started School 16 in New York City, but now we're here in Mexico City, where we've been growing this organization to really help with our mission of helping people get into lucrative careers using tech skills, but without learning how to code. Us and everybody else here in the School 16 team has been able to do amazing things because of what a tech career can enable people to do. I probably don't have to pitch and sell you all on why tech is an amazing career and why those skills are valued by so many companies in and outside of the technology sector. That's probably why you all are here today. But we started School 16 because we never learned how to code, and we were able to succeed in the tech industry. Many of our colleagues have as well. They've become successful in many roles across product management, sales, marketing, operations, making great salaries, being able to really control their career and get into roles that they want and switch jobs if they feel like they could, they want to be, they can be happier in another career, another job, but within the tech sector and leveraging those skills. And so that's something we're very passionate about. So much so that we decided to start an education company to do this. And we've had 400 grads go through our programs in just the last couple of years. So just wanted to introduce ourselves quickly here. We're excited to be here, and we'll be very active in the chat if you have any questions for us here. But with that, I'll give the mic back to Laura.
Awesome. So I will explain a little bit about why we're doing this workshop in the first place. I am a career coach, and I help clients through my own business as well as at School 16 and other boot camps that I've been a part of. And lately, I've been hearing so many people come to me saying, I just feel like my resume isn't working, or I'm getting no responses from applications. The application system just doesn't seem to be working, or like I'm not good enough. And that certainly is not true. So I want to obviously dispel that. Just because people don't respond to you does not mean you are not qualified. So I wanted to give some tips and tricks that I've been seeing work for clients, different job seekers, students, that do get them traction and really flips some of the job search on its head. So I've been a career coach now for about 4.5 years, and I was also a former technical recruiter. I did that at both kind of the enterprise level at a telecoms company, as well as in the startup space at a data analytics consulting company. I really enjoy the data science and data engineering space and have been involved in that, also in the bootcamp space. And then currently at School 16, I'm helping with people switching and pivoting into careers like technical sales, marketing, project management, for example, which might be some of the roles that some of you are interested in. I'd love to hear actually in the chat if people are going for a certain domain or a certain type of role, what your general direction is, if you wanted to share that. So in the past, 13 years of my career, I've been at everything from nonprofits to the startups and kind of larger companies that I mentioned, and in many different roles, and have pivoted myself many times. I'm starting to call myself the pivot queen. But I worked in alumni engagement early on, international education, study abroad management, and now really my niche is the bootcamp space, because yes, I love seeing where people end up and their outcomes. So in that time, I've tried to quantify it. It's about 300 job seekers now and rising. And given multiple phone screens, I mean, I lost track. I was at a high growth startup where we were interviewing daily, something like 20 people daily, maybe 10 when it was just me, and looked at resumes and seen what works, as well as my own job search. I did get laid off myself 5 to 6 months ago. And so I had to recently go through this job search as well. So really my specialty is in networking on LinkedIn, as well as explaining career trajectories that make sense to people and connecting the dots in your narrative. And so a lot of what I do when I coach is to guide people through that process and reflect a little bit about how they're presenting themselves and how they're talking about themselves. Okay. So let's see some of these roles. Yeah, CSM. So for those of you who don't know, CSM would be Customer Success Manager. And that's often a very popular field for people who might have a customer service background or who just want to get into customer success in the tech space. It's a pretty common field, and School 16 has a track for that. Let's see, any other, yeah, CSM, and then maybe some sales. Former recruiter there. Hi, Grace. Potentially CSM or account management, kind of that tech sales, or training and coaching. Yeah. Feel free to reach out to me. Definitely would love to talk about how much better it is to not be a recruiter anymore. So I'm happy to give you some ideas there. Project management, PMP. Yep. Awesome. So a couple different fields here. Great. Now, let's talk about the common job search approach, right? What people come to me usually doing. And if this sounds familiar and this has been your approach, totally fine. I would expect this. We like to trust that the application system works. So usually you're going to see a job on LinkedIn or Indeed. Then you're either going to search for a referral and maybe try and network because maybe you've been told networking works. Or what most people do is you apply, which goes into a black hole of applications, right? I don't know if you all know about science fiction and also just real science, but usually things do not return from the black hole, right? And we often do not hear back from those applications, okay? So that is what I call black hole applications, right? We send in 100 applications and hear nothing back, okay? If we do hear something back, right, it's like a 5 to 10% conversion rate. And you can do this. You can analyze your own job search funnel and say, how many jobs have I applied to with or without a referral? And what traction am I getting? How many of those converted from application to phone screen? That's what you really want to analyze to see where your problem is. What I've been seeing is nowadays in the past 5 to 6 months, especially in the past couple of months, it's only maybe a 5%, 10% if you get lucky conversion, especially if you are pivoting. Right? I will say if you are an engineer applying for an engineering role in a similar industry, you might have a higher conversion rate, 20, 30% from applying. Back in 2 to 3 years ago when I was coaching, we also used to see more of like a 20% conversion rate, even when people were pivoting. But there's simply a lot more competition going on right now. And I think there's just a lot more noise out there in general, right? We have a lot more different job platforms, people posting jobs in different places, and applications coming from multiple different job boards. Okay. So that 5% conversion rate is not very helpful. It's not getting us very far. Okay. So what would be the kind of point behind all of this, and how am I seeing data that kind of maybe adds to this point that the common or the normal job search or a passive job search of just hitting apply is probably not the right way to go? Well, studies are showing that close to 70% of jobs are never even advertised. So you're missing out on a whole field of hidden jobs if you're just hitting apply, right? If you're just going off of what is posted on LinkedIn, what is posted on Indeed, or wherever you're searching, you're going to miss out on a lot of jobs because it costs over $600 to post a job on LinkedIn, right? A lot of startups are not going to be posting there. And some companies don't know what they need until it's put in front of them, or they prefer to not post and to just go by referrals. There's whole companies out there that they're just sourcing from their own employees and who they recommend. Okay? So you'd be missing out on that pile. And you're 20 times more likely to be hired if you're referred for a job. So if you're, again, just doing the black hole application approach, you are missing out on this chance to get hired and even to just get into a phone screen because you're not getting referred in. Fun fact that some people don't realize, recruiters often have to, they're almost required, let's say, to phone screen the referral pile of applications. right? Because employees have worked hard to refer their friend or refer a contact, and we want to appreciate them by interviewing their referral person, right? It's kind of like a nice favor you can do for someone. Also, you just prefer to look at a smaller pile of applications, right? So if you have 10 to 20 referrals and 200 applications, guess what this busy recruiter is going to choose, right? We're going to pick the small pile. Okay. So that's why referrals matter so much, and just being a known entity, right? If I have 200 names that I've never seen before, I don't know what to do with that pile, right? But if I get reached out to on LinkedIn, or if I have a couple people that are vetted and trusted by others, I'm probably going to go with that smaller group. So the new approach, instead of black hole or passive applications, would basically be what I've started to call pre-networking, because you're networking before you even see a role that's posted, right? You're networking before the role is posted, okay? Because in reality, we don't want to compete, right? A lot of people say, how do I get noticed more? Or how can my resume stand out more in a pile of applications? And really, we want to go around the application system and go around the competition. We don't want to be in that pile of 200 to 300 people, okay? We don't want to play a game that's broken. So if I were creating my job search and doing this pre-networking strategy, I would actually create a company first list, kind of a targeted list, a hit list, if you want to call it that, of companies I want to go after instead of roles that I want to go after, okay? And then network my way into those companies or into a certain industry if you're focusing on a certain domain or an industry. And at that point, you'd be the first in if they do post a role, or you'd hear about a role that's not ever going to get posted, or they create a role around your skill set. Okay. At that point, you've got a much higher conversion rate, especially if you get a referral from doing those networking and coffee chat conversations, right? Very often from the data I've seen and the clients I've seen, they're getting a 60 to 80% conversion rate from application to phone screen when they're trying either this pre-networking, virtual coffee chats, or a referral, right? Or all three of those, if that makes sense. So instead of role first, it's company first, because by the time the role is posted, right? Let's say it posts today, which is Wednesday, or Thursday, geez, we're at March 2nd already. So it posts on Thursday, right? Now, if we were using the passive approach, we're like, okay, well, I got told to look for referrals. I'm going to go contact a couple of people. That takes what, 3 to 5 days at least, if you get lucky. 5 days later, how many people are in the system already? Right? Another 200, right? So by the time we see the role, it's too late really to get any traction. And that's what I'm seeing. Right? I just had a contact today say, hey, Laura, that role I was really excited for, that I prepped my resume for, but I happened to not turn my resume in on time. They turned it in 5 days late. They said the role closed, right? I'm sure you've seen that. 5 days in, the role is just closing. That didn't even used to happen a year ago, right? So again, it's proving it's really, you've got to be right on it and be the first in if you want to get that phone screen. The other benefit is this type of networking strategy also has multiple outcomes, not just related to that direct getting into the phone screen, right? It also is going to help you define your goals, because if you're having coffee chats with people in the community and in the industry you want to be in, then they're going to give you way better intel than you just Googling, how to get a job online or how to break into tech. They're going to give you real advice. And you'll be able to see if you like the roles they're in, ask them a couple more questions, right? And define your career goal. You can also have these networking coffee chats without being ready to job search. If you're just doing career exploration, you don't know, for example, someone said, I might want to do account management or coaching, right? Well, I'd be having these coffee chats to define my goals and decide and talk with people in the field, right? And then there's also long-term benefits, because once you connect with someone on LinkedIn or as a friend, or you build rapport with them, they might not be helping you just get this first job. They're now in your network, right? You have people to go to if you have questions about the field, and then you have them for your future job searches. If you get laid off again, which has happened to people in the past year, it's a long-term connection that you're making, right? And then it just simply increases your odds of getting hired. And I call it proactive luck, right? Everyone says like, oh, that person got lucky because they got that job. What they were really probably doing is being proactive and putting themselves out there so that they had a better chance at getting lucky, right? So it is partially luck, right time, right place, right person, right network. But if you're not putting yourself out there in front of those people that can give you that luck, then you're not giving yourself that chance. So I call it proactive luck. Okay. So in my head, this would be a really smart approach for multiple reasons, not just because I need one short-term goal, which is getting a job. You're really just amplifying your tech community. Okay. Any questions there so far about pre-networking, the hidden job market, as I call it, kind of these jobs that aren't posted online? We're going to go into detail about like how to actually go about this strategy, but just want to see if anyone wants to catch up. Yeah, so how would you network, or how would you network more? Oh, how would you pre-network? Yes, awesome. So we're going to go into that literally because I'm very tactical, right? I'm like, hey, how do I actually go do this? So we are going to get into that. Okay. I just want to point out again, ROI of pre-networking. This is also why this approach makes more sense to me. I work with a lot of people who have full-time jobs, right? When you have a full-time job, maybe a part-time boot camp, or you're a student, or you're doing coursework, you don't have a lot of time to invest in your job search. A lot of people might have kids, right? And so when you have a passive job search approach, you're applying a lot because people are told like quantity matters, right? That used to be the case 2 to 3 years ago. If you're sending out 100 job applications total, let's say, maybe in like a month, that's about, 20 apps a week, right? That's maybe 30 minutes per application. And say you probably are spending about that much time. And if we see that 5 to 10% conversion rate, 3 phone screens, right? And you just spent 30 hours that resulted in 3 phone screens. I'm sure y'all have been through this, right? With the pre-networking approach, you don't even have to send out 100 coffee chat requests. I've seen a lot of traction with just 20 coffee chats, right? And you're just sending out 20 requests. Not everyone's going to respond, and that's okay. Maybe it's 50% of people that respond and book a coffee chat with you. So let's say you request 4 coffee chats a week, you book 10 coffee chats total, okay? That would probably lead to 8 referrals. You might not ask for the referral in the meeting because you don't want to be self-serving. You want to build rapport and see if it's a good conversation, if they feel comfortable referring you. But very often they will after they get to know you. And so again, conversion rate, like 80% conversion rate. If you get a referral, you very often are going to get a phone screen. So maybe you get 7 phone screens total in a month, for example. Okay. And you only probably put in 5 hours of work total, because these virtual coffee chats, you're going to offer maybe 20 minutes of your time and 20 minutes of their time, because we don't want to take up too much of people's time, right? So if I had to choose to do 30 hours of work versus 5 hours and get better results, right? It makes it pretty clear when you're starting to think about it that way. And networking sounds like it takes a lot of time, but if you look at the data, right, it truly doesn't. Okay. And again, even if you were like, well, I don't mind applying, 100 times, you're not going to get intel on those hidden jobs. You might not even know advice about the interview process. Real people can give you real intel. Right? So often you do better in the process because you're getting better advice. So how do we do it, right? Yeah, so, and I saw the question, do you have an example of what the conversation would look like leading up to the coffee chat request? So yes, we have some templates of exactly what I would say to request the coffee chat, but we can talk about maybe even prior to that, but we're also going to talk about how to find these people. Okay, so that might be that prior process. So LinkedIn is kind of the main source, because while we might have our friends like phone numbers, or we might have them on Instagram, and you could certainly use that as a tactic for your friends and family. Everyone else, it's very hard to know what their email is or their cell phone. There are great ways to find that if you'd like to try that, but we have LinkedIn as a tool, right? Might as well use it. If you'd like a different tool, Clearbit and Hunter have great ways to find people's contact information. But I find that I kind of want them on LinkedIn because, again, long-term approach, I want them in my tech community, right? So I want to have them as a lasting connection. So let's assume we're just going to be on LinkedIn, okay? You first want to identify what sector or domain you're going to target. right? Because we need to build our company hit list, but how do we build a hit list out of 20 different domains we could be looking at? Okay, so we have to narrow it down a little bit. I like to think about what industries or sectors do I already know, right? So I already mentioned, I know the boot camp space. Cool. So my sector is either very specifically boot camps or ed tech, right? In the technical field, that would be ed tech. I come from a background in higher ed, which was not really a technical field. It was like working at colleges, right? So the equivalent of that in the tech world is ed tech. Very often, if you find an industry and put tech at the end, you're going to find your industry. Okay. You can also think about, if it's not industries or sectors you know from work, what am I passionate about? Maybe you volunteered somewhere where you're really passionate about it. Okay. I've been looking into like humane societies, for example, right? They need people too to work in the admin field. It could be, I geek out in my free time on, I don't know, music, and I really like high quality music. So I have these headphones. Okay, what's the company of the headphones? Anker. I wonder what field Anker is in. Right? Could I speak to this product, and would I want to maybe do tech sales for this product? Okay. And yes, what are the equivalents of my past industries called in the tech world? Okay. I find sometimes this part of the search is a little hard. So if y'all would like help, feel free to kind of put into the chat what your former sector or industry was. So that could be, oh, I worked in retail, or I worked in kind of basic customer service. I worked in the auto industry. Right? It could be, I know a lot about the K through 12 education sector. Okay. And if you want, Sergey and Vadim have kind of volunteered to maybe try and give you a couple ideas of what that new domain or sector in tech might look like, or what they might be calling it. Okay. Or if you worked in traditional marketing agencies, what would that be called in, you know, a more tech-oriented field? Okay. So yeah, awesome. Got lots of different domains. So yeah, healthcare is common, higher ed, HR. Yep. Automotive retail. I was just talking about that with someone the other day. Yep. Serving and bartending, which I would call probably customer service, right? On a golf course. So you've got also the domain, right? Is kind of sports. And then you've also got your role, which was customer service. Education, tech and legal. Yeah. Awesome. I will put a couple easy ones. There is a whole field called HR tech. That is, for example, who produces the software for HR teams, right? That's a really cool field to look into if you'd like to. There's a lot of cool companies out there. Checker is one. They're taking off. They do background checks, and it's a software that does background checks for HR teams. Oops. Startup, I kind of, yeah, working as an author's assistant. And Julia, you might want to think about what type of like things were you writing about, right? So was this like science textbooks? Was this heavy higher ed textbooks? Was it fiction? Because you want to be specific, not just about your role, but what we're looking for is what industry do I know, or what domain do I know? So do I know healthcare better, or do I know finance and fintech better? Right? And I could do whatever role within that company. I mean, well, we couldn't, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking more about, you know, what sector do I want to look at? So be really specific. Yeah, fiction and fantasy. So fantasy, right? So there might be some alignment with some different things there, or a fiction-based book company. There might be an equivalent for that, right? There are online bookstores, right? Or Goodreads, for example, right? People work behind the website of Goodreads. Cool. Okay, so people are going to be helping out with a couple of these sectors. Again, if you put tech behind it, you'll probably find it. Health tech is a field. Biotech is also a growing field. So those, I saw someone say healthcare. That's often something to look into. There's also the mental health sector, which is sort of in alignment with that. There's also a growing industry of health tech that is like scheduling, right? Because we have a lot of remote and telemedicine. So telehealth and telemedicine tech, basically. That's not what they would, I don't think that's the exact search term, but that's an interesting field to look into right now, is just talking with a client who has a healthcare company that specifically focuses on telemedicine. Okay. Awesome. Now, you can also try to put yourself in the employer's shoes and see it from their perspective. When they're looking at my resume or my background, what are they going to think my domain or industry is, right? And so what would be an apples to apples comparison from my past to my future that would make it easy for them to connect the dots of, yes, you know this field, or you are a subject matter expert in finance, healthcare, whatever it might be. And it doesn't have to be that you're the expert, but you probably know more about finance than I do, for example, if you've worked in finance, right? So it's an easier way in if your pivot is in a similar domain in tech, because the hiring manager is going to see that similar story, and it's going to be a little bit easier to convince them to interview you. Conversations also go better if you know the subject material. Okay, so you don't have to do this, but pick 2 or 3 domains, right? And it might be based on your past. Okay, so now we make our hit list. So I would be making some type of table, right, with a section for company, LinkedIn contact, and then maybe outreach, yes or no, have I reached out to them yet? Right, and you update that as you reach out to people. So we're going to make that list by going down rabbit holes of just general search term ideas and phrases. You can look on websites like Crunchbase, which focuses on startups, especially funding for startups. Forbes has the best companies to work for types of lists. And then built in is a tech startup focused website that has job boards, but also has a whole blog and kind of industry research section to it. Okay. So if I was just Googling, I would put different terms like best remote companies to work for, or best companies to work for in my city or state. Startups that got funding in 2022 or 2023. That typically means that they're about to go through a hiring round, because they often invest their money in hiring new talent. Right? If you knew a domain, like I really like SaaS and I like cloud native SaaS, so software as a service, it's kind of what I'm talking about. I might type in top cloud native solutions and softwares and look at who the leaders in that space are, or the smaller companies in that space, right? We don't have to go for the big names. Okay. Again, these are just examples of rabbit holes to go down. You can search for whatever you want, and there's no wrong way to do this. It's starting from somewhere and maybe pulling 3 to 5 companies off of each of these search terms. Okay. And then you'd add LinkedIn contacts, and you would reference LinkedIn after you go down the Google rabbit hole. And then you're typing in something like, okay, I found Zillow, right? In real estate and real estate tech. Okay. You know, I want to be a project manager. So project manager at Zillow. And now I found their contact info. I add it to my hit list. Okay. So let's see, just reviewing some of the questions here. And yeah, Julia, I'll address your question in just a second so that we can have a private conversation about it. Cool. So when we're looking at who we want to reach out to, I think most of you are somewhat familiar with LinkedIn, but in case you aren't, because some industries don't use LinkedIn as much, we really want to start with looking at our first level connections, right? Our actual friends, the people we have connected with. Also, make sure that your family, friends, former coworkers are first connections. Sometimes we forget to add people that we actually know, right? So you could look at first connections, see if you have any connections. Do I know anyone working at Zillow already that's in my network, right? Then you want to move on to second connections, which would be like a friend of a friend or a contact of a contact, right? And sometimes you can get warm introductions to these people, which makes it a lot less intimidating to reach out to them. Or you can name drop if you feel that's the right place, if you're close to a friend. So if I have this first connection, Mary, and she knows Bill, right? I can say, hey, Bill, I see you know my friend Mary, who I worked with at what XYZ company. I'd love to chat with you about your career path because I'm really interested in project management. And I see you've been doing that for quite a few years now. I'd love to book a coffee chat with you. Okay. So if you name drop, it's very similar to having someone introduce you, or you could ask Mary to introduce you to Bill. Okay. Could you write a little note? I'd really like to talk to Bill. I see you know him. Would you feel comfortable connecting me on LinkedIn? Okay. And then third connections are what I call like strangers, right? Unknown contacts completely. But that doesn't mean we can't reach out to them, right? It just means you might have to customize your message a little bit more because you don't have a direct in with them. So you want to just make sure that your message is kind of valuable and transparent, right? I think most people don't want to sound too salesy. And really the way to not do that is to just be very authentic. Right? You can know how to make your own conversations and your own connection notes authentic so that they sound like you and they sound like you're interested in these people, not just using them for some kind of a self-serving purpose. So on LinkedIn, we want to remember kind of outreach best practices. We want to try and find commonalities between us and the person we're trying to reach out to, especially if they're an unknown contact. Look for mutual connections, keep your message short because we know people do not have a lot of attention span and they don't have a lot of time to read messages. And we only have 300 characters in a connection note, right? So we have to keep it concise. Provide social proof, which would be something like, I have, a little bit of that second connection strategy, right? I see we have a lot of mutual contacts. It's kind of like, oh, we're in the same space. Okay. So if you notice that, you might want to point it out. Consider sharing a resource or article. If it's someone that maybe you've been following for a while, you kind of know what content they produce. You think you could have like a podcast they might be interested in. You don't have to do that, but that's another way to connect with people and to provide some value before you might have a chat with them. You want to personalize your outreach messages so it doesn't sound like you're mass, messaging everyone. And then track each lead and pursue them. I have a lot of people try networking and they send out like 10 connection requests and maybe 10 people accept the requests, but then they forget to actually follow up and say, okay, here, thanks for connecting. Here's what I want now, right? And have a direct ask. So you need to have that follow-up. And when we send out our messages, usually I send a connection note that's a little bit vague and I have an example. Because I don't want to make my ask until I know they want to be friends with me, right? Until they want to connect with me. They connect with me, there's my in. Awesome, you basically said yes. So then I make my ask and I make it as easy as possible for them to meet with me very kind of quickly, like a very little back and forth. So I identify specific days and times and I mention like, I'll set it up, right? I'll do the work. Okay. So this is another tactic that if you've been having trouble getting people to respond, or there's a whole lot of back and forth and they seem to lose interest, it might just be that you need to be a little more specific because people get decision fatigue. If you're like, I'm free anytime next week, they might not choose anything because that's a whole lot of options, right? If you say, would you be available to meet this Thursday or Friday afternoon? There's really only two options and they can pick one or the other. Okay. I think a lot of us would prefer that if people are just direct. Here's a couple options, pick one. And then, yes, Sergey mentioned too, yeah, it's okay to follow up, right? People get busy, people go on vacation, people don't check LinkedIn all the time. Okay, so if you need to follow up once or twice, that is completely fine. Okay. So usually we want to start with known or warm contacts. Right. So often you start with family and friends, making sure you're connecting with them however you see fit. It doesn't have to be LinkedIn, but sometimes I forget. My friends have jobs. I might want to follow them on LinkedIn, right? And they might want to know I'm job searching. If your friends and family don't know you're job searching, then no one does. Right. So remind them and ask for their help. But sometimes they can get a little burnt out on helping occasionally. So there's other people that might want to pay it forward that have already been helped. And people really want to help nowadays, right? They know layoffs are happening. They might have gotten laid off themselves and gotten lucky and gotten a job. They're looking to pay it forward. So former coworkers, people from any alma mater type, either university, high school, boot camp connections, you're now part of an alumni network. And you can use that alumni network. So you might not know those people. Maybe they went a year or two behind you or a year or two forward, but you still have something in common, right? So that's more of a second connection or a warm contact, because you'd be able to say, hey, I saw we both went to Hamilton College, or we both went to School 16. I'd love to catch up, about your time since we graduated. Okay. So it's a little bit of an easier intro message. And then of course, second connection introductions would be, I see you know so-and-so, would you mind introducing me? Then, eventually, whether it's a known connection or a new connection, well, actually, let's say you haven't connected on LinkedIn, even if you know them, okay? You're still going to want to connect and add a note. Some people forget to customize their message. They just hit connect. Maybe you send it on your phone and you hit that connect button, which sends automatically, right? Always try to add a note. And I often suggest doing it from your computer because the app does not make this easy. So we're going to add a note. We have 300 characters, and this is what I'm talking about, our connection note, right? We'll talk a little bit more about templates in a second. Now, searching for unknown contacts. How do we find them? If we don't know them, how do we find them? Again, rabbit holes. The search bar in LinkedIn has gotten a lot better. So you can put a whole lot of information in there and find the right people. So I would just go to the search bar and I'm typing in things like project manager at Zillow, like we talked about. Or I know I was in retail, so I like e-commerce as a field and I like fashion companies. Okay, e-commerce, Fashion Nova. And maybe it pops up with the e-commerce analyst or e-commerce marketing manager. Right? In that case, you're not looking for a specific role because maybe you're open to talking to multiple people who work there. You're just trying to see who pops up on the list and who seems nice, who you might have connections with already that you didn't notice. Could be anything. Or maybe by your city. I want to connect with people in Chicago or people in Denver, people in Costa Rica, right? So I'm going to type in, Chicago craft sales, right? Or let's say, we have San Jose, Costa Rica. And if you know a headquarters of a company that's there, you could look there. Okay. There's no right or wrong way to do this. You just let yourself go down a couple rabbit holes. Oh, shoot, tornadoes, that's never good. Sorry, Vanessa. Okay. Awesome, just checking the chat. So we can often use this search bar to go to the people section, right? We are not looking at the job section. People section, we can look for second connections or first connections. You can filter by that. And then you want to filter by current company if you're looking for people who currently work at Zillow or Fashion Nova or Craft, because it will show up with people who used to work there, and that's not going to be as helpful for your search. So that's another filter you might want to use more commonly. Now let's get to the templates. Okay, so if I had already connected with someone, let's say we've met at some point. Again, this literally worked for me. This is the message I sent to get a current job. Okay, first connection, but hadn't reconnected in a while. And I want to be authentic. I'm not going to be like, hey, buddy, we talk all the time, right? I'm going to admit like, oh, we haven't really caught up. Okay, so it's informal, but I'm still addressing why I'm reaching out. So this would be a message versus a connection note. Hey, X person, we had connected a while ago while I was at this company. Of course, alas, layoffs hit us too, right? It's given me a chance to focus on my coaching business though. And I'd love to chat and catch up next Wednesday or Thursday. I'd love to hear how things at Z company, which would be like their company, is going, and Denver life in general, because I noticed or remembered we both happen to be in Denver. Okay, so super informal, but I'm still telling them what I want and I'm giving them a choice of days. Right. And they responded within 24 hours and they're like, yep, I'm free on Thursday. Let's meet. And I set it up. Okay. Now, the unknown or second connection contact. So we have to send a connection note because we can't send them a message yet. They haven't connected. We're just going to use the tactic of curiosity. Right. I'm curious about you. I'm curious about your career. Right. That's what people want to respond to. So, hi, Ayla. I saw that you're a project manager for Slalom and are here in Denver like me. And I wanted to know a little bit about your career journey and the company culture. I'm considering a couple different career options right now, and project manager is one of those that's certainly of interest. I'd love to chat further. Okay. That last line might sound really simple, but that's a psychological buy-in. If they hit connect, you have said, I want to chat further, and they have said yes. Right? So that's the buy-in right there. That's why that little last line is actually a great line. If you're nervous, you're like, I don't know if I'm asking too many favors. They hit connect, they know you're going to chat with them. Okay. And you're asking about their career journey, which is something they personally can answer. The recruiter can't answer that. The hiring manager can't answer that. You're asking about them in particular, and people want to talk about themselves and give advice. Okay, so that's also where some messages go wrong. You might be mentioning like, I saw a role that's open at your company and I'd love to hear more about it, but they're not the recruiter. They just work there. They're going to send you to the recruiter because they're the spokesperson for the company, right? So if you've gotten redirected in the past, that could have been part of that because you're too role focused, or you're talking to people who want to talk about themselves, but you're asking about something that's more company kind of top level based. In general, you just want to remember, you don't need an exact template, right? But when you're creating your templates, you just want to focus your note on why you're reaching out or how you found the person. So did you find them because of the company, because of their role, because you're in the same city, because you have mutual connections, who you are, a little brief about yourself. Sometimes I add in like, for example, that I'm in the same field as they are, or I have a similar technical skill, or I have a similar background. And then how they can act, or a hint to how they can act. So that would be, I'd love to chat further, or I'm looking for some advice. And just include something they personally can answer or address, which is often their career journey. Okay. Or I've asked people about certificates, right? I see you took 2 certificates and I'm considering that. I'd love your advice on which one you thought was more worthwhile, right? Only they can really address that. When we're sending out these notes, we want to be pretty confident that they are going to meet with us. We want to assume that people want to meet, because the other problem I see is when we're really nervous and we say, if you might want to meet with me, I would love to have your time, right? And it sounds like pretty much they don't want to meet with you. We don't want to go in with that kind of level of uncertainty. We want to say, I'd love to chat. When is a good time, right? Or when can we set it up, okay? If they want to say no, they will say no, and that's okay, right? But we don't want to assume already going in that we're asking this huge favor. We're usually asking them for 20 minutes of their time. That really doesn't put anyone out, especially when we're all working remotely and isolated. People want to chat and have something different in their day. What about messages sent directly to the recruiter? Yes. Sometimes you can see who posts the role on LinkedIn. I try to reach out to a recruiter after applying. Yes, Grace, that is awesome. And that's what I would call going like the extra mile. So that would be an awesome idea. If you chatted with people, see a great role, but you can't get a referral, so you need to do something extra. Yeah, you ping the recruiter after, and that's a great strategy. Okay. I don't ask them to meet with me because recruiters never have time to meet unless they're going to phone screen you. But I do ask something like, let me know if my skill set is what you're looking for. Right. And you kind of leave the ball in their court. Your call to action is kind of go look at my application in the system. Right. And that would be an awesome goal if they did that. Yeah. So great tactic, but don't have it be your only tactic, right? Because that's post applying. And y'all have noticed probably how fast those rejection messages come, right? So you want to amplify your chances of getting into the phone screen by getting more intel. Maybe you optimize your resume, or you hear about a role and you're first to apply. But yeah, that would be like extra credit. You want to keep moving onward. One person doesn't respond, you just keep going, move on to the next person. Not everyone will respond, right? If one opportunity from a coffee chat doesn't work out, isn't the right fit for you, you just keep going and looking for more opportunities. Okay, so we just have to be resilient and control what we can control, because we can't control how many people respond in what time frame, but we can control what we put into our search and what we put into our networking, how many people we contact, how we optimize our templates, right? How much we try this tactic. Those are the parts you can control. And if are any of you, I don't see we had any marketers, but some of you might know some social media marketing, some subject line kind of testing. A/B testing comes from the marketing world. And really, it's talking about what message works better, A or B, right? We can apply this to our job search and to our networking, okay? So you want to always be identifying What did I do or say differently this time that made someone respond? Okay, I'm going to double down on that. What type of person or what type of role responded? So if I reach out to all recruiters and they're not responding, maybe I'm reaching out to the wrong role. If I reach out to all future teammate level people, so future project managers that I would work with, right? They would be on the same team with me, or future, I don't know, HR people, right? Same team level you'd be at. And they all respond or they don't respond, you move on to the next, right? So it really just depends. You want to analyze this. Okay? What type of company, what type of industry? If you chose 2 domains and you notice only people from healthcare are responding and no one from finance is, you double down on healthcare. Right? So you might notice your analysis might be, oh, future teammate level people from healthcare responded the most. Okay, I'm doubling down on that approach. Right? Right? Once you find what works, you want to actually do more of that, not pause and see what happens, right? Because you've now found what works and you want to amplify your luck. Yeah, it's very much like sales prospecting. If anyone has a background in sales, you're not going to sound salesy doing this, right? Because you're not selling anything, are you? Right? I mean, you are kind of selling yourself, but in reality, you're doing them a favor because you're introducing them to yourself, who might be a nice teammate to work with in the future, right? You're also probably giving them money. Right? Have any of you worked for companies that have referral bonuses? Okay. Yep. Josh definitely has. Every single company I've worked for has had one. Okay. It's what, $500 to $1,000. I've seen even more for certain roles. Okay. So you're literally going to be doing them a favor by them referring you, right? Why do you think people try and refer, and give their link out so much, right? So this is certainly, it is sales tactics, but it's not salesy because again, they don't have to buy anything. You're not selling anything. Okay. So I like to think about, I'm doing you a favor by talking to you. I'm giving you a chance to refer me, right? And if you think about it that way, you're like, okay, cool. I could help some people out. Hard economy, give you $1,000 if I get hired on. Right. Now, extra ways. So someone already hinted to this. Okay, this can't be the only tactic or the only thing you do, right? It's not. This is the baseline of what's going to change your strategy a whole lot and see a lot more traction, but there's always extra. You could ping external staffing agencies or external recruiters, kind of these headhunters, okay? They're always willing to work for you, right? And you can ask them for chats if they're external, if they don't work at the company that they're hiring for. Right. There's a whole list of external staffing agencies out there, but the reputable ones that I've seen are Robert Half, Adecco, Aerotech. It's quite a few. Okay? If you Google kind of best staffing agencies in 2023, there's good lists out there. You can attend virtual or in-person events to then also see who else to network with and to put yourself out there. Power to Fly has great, usually women in tech focused events. Lunch Club is basically a lunch networking group virtually. And then Eventbrite or Meetup often posts a lot of these virtual and in-person events, both, in any type of space, but you can filter by tech. You can produce LinkedIn content so that you are more top of mind on people's feed on LinkedIn. And it doesn't have to be like writing a blog post. It can be sharing your favorite article that you read this week. It could be your favorite TED Talk. It could be your thoughts about ChatGPT, right? That is still content. Okay. You can follow the Now Hiring hashtag on LinkedIn. This is what hiring managers, usually not recruiters sometimes, but usually hiring managers post. When they post a role, it hashtags it Now Hiring. And so they're the decision maker that you could also reach out to if you wanted to do some extra networking or introduce yourself. Okay. And so I forget, maybe it was Grace who mentioned they were reaching out to recruiters. Or Anne, but you could also reach out to hiring managers after you apply, because again, they can't refer you, they don't get referral bonuses, and they might not have time to meet with you unless they're going to interview you, but you could get on their radar by finding them. So that would be extra credit as well. I did apply, maybe I even networked in with a referral, but I'm still going to ping the hiring manager. Okay, so that would be another thing. These networking groups and communities are great if you affiliate with any type of particular special community. There's also communities for veterans. There's career fairs for veterans. There is Fairy God Boss, Ladies Get Paid. There's a lot for women in tech. There is Tech Korea is a great one. It's at the bottom of the list here for Latinas in tech. Okay. Out in tech for the LGBTQ community. There's so many organizations. Okay. So affiliating with these groups that often have Discord channels or Slack groups, a lot of the women, or sorry, there's a lot of women focused organizations. A lot of what we work on at School 16 is getting underrepresented groups into tech, which is often women in tech. But anyways, in general, okay, they often have these channels where they're either helping people get referrals and they're sharing, information about jobs getting posted, or just a community for advice and to do your networking in. These are all some good resources. I'm part of Fairy God Boss, part of Ladies Get Paid. They also have great just articles, right? Good content to read and get new ideas from. So if I had to go and design my action plan for like next week, my job search, I'd build out my hit list first, right? I would create the templates I want to use and keep copies of them somewhere. For each audience, like type of role or type of person I'm going to reach out to, I'd request my coffee chats. Maybe my goal would be 10 per week. That does not mean 10, you're going to have 10 per week, right? But 50% might say yes. I would attend some events. I prefer usually virtual events. And then I would just like take the signs from the universe, right? You can't predict where these coffee chats are going to go, and that's okay, right? Allow the universe to take those conversations where it may. I very often have not been able to predict who would connect me with someone further that then would help me with either my job search or just intel and advice on my career goals. And then follow up with the people you're networking with and with follow up with what they've told you to go and do. So if they say, you really should talk with my friend Mary, here's her LinkedIn, make sure you go reach out to Mary, right? And then thank people and return the favor if you can, or pay it forward when you can, right? You don't always have to return favors, so you can just pay it forward, and that is equally a good gesture of gratitude. But if someone's advice got you further, that's really all they need from these coffee chats, is to know that their advice was listened to and might have made a difference. We have 4 minutes left. I wanted to turn it back over to Sergey to discuss something that we're offering here, because I know this had to be really quick, and I know a lot of people have lots of extra questions. So Sergey, do you want to explain kind of the virtual coffee chats?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Laura, for all this information. Folks, there was so many great nuggets here, but sometimes the simplest advice that you hear is really the most impactful. So if you heard something here where you're like, this is simple, but I haven't done it yet, I think, try to do it. But to make it easier for you to start getting some of these coffee chats or informational interviews, if you want to call it that, on the calendar to do a little bit more networking, Vadim and I decided to open up our calendars for about 20-minute calls. If it goes a little bit longer, that's great, to chat with anybody here that would like to. We certainly have a great network here, as do many other folks in the School 16 team. Our goal is to help people be successful in their job search and getting conversations with people that they want to talk to, and helping them get their foot in the door in companies that they'll be happy working for. And so for that reason, we decided to offer for the next 2 weeks, so starting from next Monday through the following week, for 2 weeks, we'll be offering virtual coffee chats. Vadim just dropped the link right there in the chat, so you can go ahead and click and schedule your time now before they're filled up, because our calendars do get filled up pretty quickly. But we love talking to people that comes to these events, and we just wanted to make it very easy for you to have your first coffee chat if you haven't had one for a while. You don't have to have coffee, you could have green tea, you don't have to have a drink at all. But we just would love to talk to you, and happy to help in any way that we can.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll drop that in the chat. And then I'd love to just open it up for questions. And, I know some people have already shared their stories also about like referral bonuses and things like that. But if you've tried this approach, if you've tried networking into a past job, how did it work? How did you get that job? Or what are your roadblocks? What are you still stuck on? Where do you think in this maybe strategy you might find a roadblock still that would be a little helpful to get more information on?
Hi there, everyone. This is Ann. I actually did network into my last position. And
Mhm.
now that I'm thinking about that, I'm like, I need to employ that strategy again.
Uh-huh.
And we actually, as a part of that company, we actually did coffee chats as a mandate. Every month, we would have to do a coffee chat with, because it was a global company, we'd have to do coffee chats with at least 2 people. And we were assigned that. So it's a very effective method that I need to get back to employing. So thank you
Mhm.
for the reminder, you guys.
Yeah, some people kind of forget that they might have gotten past jobs by networking, or it might have been a hidden job. I've heard a lot of people say, oh yeah, my role wasn't actually posted, right? They just either gave it to me or I applied internally. A friend mentioned it to me. So sometimes we do forget that, yeah, how common it is. Awesome. Tony, thank you for the resource you sent in, NCWIT. That's great. Any other questions or things you want to share about things that have been working for you or traction you're getting? I will say the part we did skip over that people should be asking is, what do you say once you get into the coffee chat? There's a great video out there by Steve Dalton called, I think, Informational Interviewing. Okay. Oh, Julia, that's a great tip. Yeah, you can network on Facebook, right? It does not have to be limited to LinkedIn. You know, if you know that that's where your sector is, where your friends and family are. I've had people where they had a lot of friends and families and coworkers on Instagram. So yeah, they posted on Instagram that they were job searching and they got more traction that way, right? It's not always the normal approach, but you know where your audience is and where maybe your former coworkers are. And if they're not using LinkedIn as much, you can use alternative media. And sorry, I was interrupted, but so yeah, Steve Dalton wrote a book called The 2-Hour Job Search, but also he has a free YouTube video called Informational Interviewing, and he lists out a bunch of great questions to ask. But in general, you want to start from broad down to narrow, right? So broad general questions that don't focus on yourself as much. You're probably going to tell them about yourselves, right? But after you kind of introduce yourself, it's a little bit more about, for example, how did you get into this field? Or how did you get into this role? Maybe ask them if they networked into the role, right? So very open-ended questions. You know, what are challenges that your team is facing right now? What types of projects are you working on right now? What do you enjoy about this field or this role? Okay. What's the culture like at the company and what would you like to see changed? And then you can narrow in, right? Now you're like, okay, I need advice, right? So it might be something like, you know, if I was thinking about applying to your company as a project manager, what do you think would stand out? Or who really excels in these types of roles? Or based on what I've told you about myself, what else do you think I should try? Right. And then I always add in at the end of a conversation, who else do you think I should speak to? Because they might know someone. So even if their company is not hiring or they can't help you, very often they'll connect you with someone who will. And what other companies should I be looking at? Because if they're in ed tech, for example, and you don't know that field as well, or you don't know the big players, someone who works in ed tech will know the top players, and often they'll point you in the right direction. Right. So again, their company is not hiring, doesn't matter, still a valuable conversation because they might know 2 other companies that are hiring. Okay. So I always make sure to add those in, but more towards the end because those are very specific questions. Okay. So as long as you go general to narrow, I think those are good. And you want to make sure you're learning enough about them, asking about them, their journey, how they got there. Okay. And, you know, something like, hey, I'm really glad we got a chance to talk. I'd love to just introduce myself a little bit. And that's where you're doing kind of your personal narrative, elevator pitch. That's kind of a whole other topic, right? But a little bit about yourself so they know enough in order to help you. All right. I'm looking into this field. I really think I'd like project management. I've done these other things in the past, these similar things, or I've built up these skills and I think they'd be really useful in project management. And then you ask about them. Yep, but there's some great articles there about, you know, coffee chat or informational interview questions to ask, and I would probably pull from some of those lists. Yeah, and Julia, you found like a project management group that kind of gives out referrals. So that's another way. And that's probably from that Facebook group. So yeah, Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, they're not as active, but those can often be one other way to network with people. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, anyone who attended today is welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to try and give other tips and tricks or just resources to look at. Hopefully this sparks some new ideas, sends you in the right direction. If anything does end up happening out of this webinar, maybe you get a phone screen, feel free to let me know. And if you create a template and you just want a second glance at the template, I'm happy to look it over once you've kind of customized it to your voice to see if I think it might work. I've had to see many, many different connection messages and often have that hint to what might get people to respond. So I'm happy to look at those. Yes, LinkedIn, if you look at Laura Holt, let me see. Here, I'll stop my share now and grab my link. It's Holt E. Laura. I'll put that in the chat. There you go. Oh, yep. Thank you, Julie. Awesome. And then the topic that we're thinking about, if you have any future topics you'd like to, we're probably going to make these recurring in some way. We are considering about how to upskill and how to know what to upskill in, right? What courses, certificates, classes to take, what tutorials online you might want to focus on. So if any of you are milling that about or would be interested in that topic, definitely let us know, because I think that's really helpful to identify, right? The only way, you know, we can get further in the interview and in the resume and kind of application process is both by networking and by being qualified enough to know you can do the role. Yeah, and then interview tips for neurodivergent people and disabled workers. Yes, that would be great. I would love to do that. And have worked, yeah, I think that would be a fun topic. I'm going to save that one. Thank you for the suggestion, Julia. Putting that link there and the WIT group as well. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining. I think we will end here if that's it. And yeah, feel free to connect with each other as well. Again, you could set up coffee chats with anyone who was in this room today. You might be able to help each other out. Awesome. I'll see you all soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks, Laura.